The discovery. The Crimson Expanse had been silent for 3,000 years. No ship that entered its swirling red clouds ever returned, no signal ever escaped its depths, and no civilization dared challenge its mysteries. The Galactic Covenant had declared it forbidden space, marked it with warning beacons in 17 languages, and stationed automated defense platforms to turn back the curious. Yet on this ordinary patrol cycle, something extraordinary happened. A signal emerged from the void, weak but unmistakably artificial, carrying a signature that made Captain Korvac's scales turn pale. The Zelvani captain stood rigid on the bridge of the patrol cruiser Star Whisper, his forearms gripping the command rail as data streamed across the holographic displays. His crew worked in tense silence, double-checking their instruments, hoping for equipment failure rather than accepting what they were seeing. The signal was human in origin, broadcasting on frequencies that Earth's children had used before their mysterious disappearance 2 centuries ago. Lieutenant Threx, the ship's science officer, broke the silence first. His voice carried the tremor of someone forced to speak an impossible truth. "Captain, the signal analysis is complete. The quantum signature matches human technology, specifically their deep space exploration vessels from the late expansion period. The patterns are consistent with their emergency beacons, though heavily distorted by the Expanse's interference." Korvac's primary eyes focused on the data, while his secondary pair scanned his crew. Fear rippled through them like waves across water. Every being aboard knew the stories of the Crimson Expanse, how entire fleets had vanished without trace, how the sector seemed to devour space and time itself. Some claimed it was a natural phenomenon, a cosmic anomaly that bent reality. Others whispered of ancient weapons, god-killers left behind by civilizations that had transcended physical existence. None of the theories mattered now. What mattered was that a human ship was broadcasting from inside, and humans had been gone for 200 years. The Covenant believed humanity had destroyed itself in some final war, their homeworld found empty, their colonies abandoned overnight. No bodies, no messages, no explanation, just absence where billions had once thrived. The galaxy had mourned them. These strange creatures who packed lifetimes of emotion into mere decades, who fought with savage brilliance and loved with reckless abandon. Now their ghost was calling from the one place no living thing should exist. Navigator Yaela adjusted her crystalline form to better interface with the ship's systems. "Captain, if we report this to Covenant Command, they will either order us to investigate or send a full military fleet. Either option risks breaching the quarantine. The Expanse has been peaceful because we leave it alone." Korvac understood her concern. The last time anyone had attempted to probe the Expanse, 3 systems had experienced temporal fluctuations. Planets aged centuries in days, stars flickered between youth and death, and several species reported shared nightmares of burning skies and screaming void. The Covenant had decided then that some mysteries were better left unsolved. But humans had always been different. Where others saw walls, humans saw challenges. Where the galaxy accepted limitations, humanity asked why. "Set course for the signal's origin," Korvac commanded, his voice steady despite the churning in his stomachs. "Maintain maximum sensor range and prepare emergency jump coordinates. If the Expanse begins to affect our systems, we leave immediately." The Star Whisper turned toward the crimson clouds, its engines humming with barely contained power. As they approached the boundary, reality began to shift subtly. Colors seemed more vivid, shadows moved independently of their sources, and the crew reported hearing familiar voices calling from empty corridors. Korvac ordered all non-essential personnel to sealed quarters, reducing the bridge crew to minimum operational standards. Hours passed like minutes, or perhaps minutes like hours. Time meant nothing here. The ship's chronometers showed different readings, sometimes running backward, sometimes jumping forward in stuttering leaps. Through it all, the human signal grew stronger, more insistent, like a drowning voice calling for rescue. Then they saw it. The human vessel hung motionless in a pocket of clear space, surrounded by the swirling crimson chaos like an island in a storm. It was ancient by human standards, one of their early deep space exploration ships, the kind they had built when the galaxy still doubted their ability to leave their home system. The USS Pioneer, according to the faded hull markings. Its design was crude compared to modern vessels, all hard angles and exposed systems, but it possessed that distinctive human quality of stubborn functionality. Life signs. Captain? Threx reported, his voice barely a whisper. The ship shows minimal power, but there are biological readings. Faint, possibly in stasis, but unmistakably human. The impossible had just become more impossible. Humans on a ship that predated their disappearance, alive in a sector that killed everything, broadcasting a signal that shouldn't exist. Korvac faced a decision that would either make him a hero or a cautionary tale. The safe choice was to mark the coordinates and retreat, let the Covenant decide what to do. But something in the human signal pulled at him, a quality he had heard in their music, seen in their art, felt in their presence when they had walked among the stars. "Prepare a boarding team," he ordered. "Environmental suits, full protection, constant communication with the ship. We go in, we learn what we can, and we leave. The galaxy deserves to know what happened to humanity." The boarding pod launched silently, carrying Korvac and 3 volunteers through the crimson void. As they approached the Pioneer, the distortions intensified. They saw themselves arriving before they left, watched their own pod from angles that shouldn't exist, heard their conversations in reverse. The human ship seemed to pulse with each meter they closed, as if sensing their approach, as if waiting. The airlock was functional, responding to their override codes with mechanical precision. Inside, the corridors were dark but intact, preserved by the strange properties of the expanse. Frost covered the walls, and their lights created dancing shadows that moved too slowly, lingered too long. The artificial gravity was weak but present. Another impossibility given the ship's apparent power levels. They found the first message scrawled on a bulkhead in multiple languages, including several alien scripts. "We chose this. We're sorry we had to." The words were carved deep, as if the writer had needed to make them permanent, make them last. The bridge was their destination, but the journey felt like walking through history. They passed crew quarters with personal effects floating in the weak gravity, photographs of Earth as it had been, green and blue and beautiful. They found laboratories with experiments still running, data still compiling after centuries. Everything suggested the crew had expected to return, had planned for a temporary absence that became eternal. When they reached the bridge, they found the crew. 12 humans in stasis pods arranged in a circle, their life signs barely registering but definitely present. At the center, one pod remained empty, its occupant presumably the one who had activated the emergency beacon. The bridge's main screen showed a message waiting to be played. Korvac reached for the activation key, knowing that whatever came next would change everything. The Expanse had kept this secret for 2 centuries, had preserved these humans and their ship against all natural law. Now he would learn why, and perhaps understand why humanity had chosen to disappear. The message began to play, and with it, the truth that would shake the foundations of everything the galaxy believed about life, death, and the spaces between stars. The human on the screen looked tired but determined, carrying the weight of an entire species' destiny. She spoke slowly, carefully, knowing her words would echo through time. "My name is Captain Sarah Chen, and this is the truth about humanity's disappearance." The truth unveiled, Captain. Sarah Chen's image flickered on the screen, her eyes holding a mixture of exhaustion and resolve that seemed to transcend the centuries between recording and viewing. Behind her, the bridge of the Pioneer showed signs of modification. Alien technology integrated seamlessly with human systems, creating hybrid configurations that shouldn't have been possible with the technology of her era. If you're watching this, then our beacon finally reached someone brave enough or foolish enough to enter the Crimson Expanse. You need to understand that humanity didn't disappear. We evolved. We transformed. We became something the galaxy wasn't ready to accept. Korvac felt his scales shift involuntarily as the recording continued. Threx was scanning the stasis pods, his instruments detecting quantum signatures that defied conventional physics. The humans inside weren't just preserved. They were suspended between states of existence, simultaneously present and absent, alive and beyond life. Chen's message continued, her voice growing stronger. 200 years ago, we discovered something in the Expanse. Not a weapon, not a threat, but an opportunity. The Crimson Clouds aren't a natural phenomenon or ancient defense system. They're a gateway, a testing ground created by beings who transcended physical existence eons ago. They left it here as an invitation, a challenge for any species brave enough to take the next step. The boarding team exchanged glances through their helmets. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't destroyed itself or been conquered. They had found a path to something greater, but at what cost? We tried to explain to the Covenant, Chen's recording went on. But how do you tell a galaxy full of species content with their limitations that there's another way? How do you explain that death isn't an ending but a transformation? That consciousness can exist beyond flesh, that thought can shape reality itself? We knew they would see us as corrupted, dangerous, maybe even insane. So we made a choice. Threx's scanner began beeping urgently. Captain, the stasis pods are responding to our presence. Power levels are increasing, and the temporal distortions are stabilizing around them. It's as if our being here has triggered some kind of awakening protocol. Before Korvac could respond, one of the pods began its opening sequence. Mechanical arms retracted, preservation fluids drained, and monitors showed life signs strengthening from near death to full vitality in moments. The figure inside stirred, then sat up with movements too smooth, too precise for someone who had been frozen for centuries. It was Chen herself, looking exactly as she did in the recording, untouched by time. Her eyes opened and immediately focused on Korvac, showing no surprise at seeing an alien face. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated in frequencies both heard and felt. Captain Korvac of the Star Whisper. We've been waiting for you, specifically you. The Expanse told us you would come, showed us this moment before it happened. Time doesn't work the same way here. We've been experiencing all possible futures, all potential pasts, living in the spaces between seconds. Korvac stepped back, his training warring with his curiosity. You're saying humanity chose to enter the Expanse to become something else? Why leave the Pioneer here? Why the beacon? Chen stood, her movements rippling through space in ways that hurt to observe directly. Because we needed an anchor, a bridge between what we were and what we've become. The 12 of us volunteered to stay partially human, to maintain a connection to physical reality. We're translators, interpreters between two states of existence. The beacon was for you, for someone who would listen without fear. Around them, the other pods began their opening sequences. Each human that emerged carried the same otherworldly quality, as if they existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They didn't walk so much as flow through space, their presence bending reality around them. Lieutenant Yaela's voice crackled through the comm. Captain, something's happening outside. The Expanse is changing. The crimson clouds are forming patterns, almost like they're communicating. Chen smiled, an expression both human and utterly alien. The Expanse recognizes you now. You've made contact with us, which means you've passed the first test. The beings who created this place, they weren't gods or monsters. They were simply the first to realize that consciousness isn't bound by physics, that thought itself is the fundamental force of the universe. But why humanity? Korvac asked, needing to understand. The galaxy had dozens of older species, races with greater technology, longer histories. Because we were young enough to be fearless, Chen replied. We hadn't lived long enough to become set in our ways, to accept that things had to be as they were. Every human child asks why the sky is blue, why stars shine, why death exists. Most species eventually stop asking. We never did. When the Expanse called, we answered not with ships or weapons, but with curiosity. The transformed humans began working with the Pioneer systems, and the ship responded in ways that defied its apparent age and condition. Screens lit up with data streams in languages that shifted between known and unknown, showing formulas that described reality as a malleable concept rather than fixed law. Threx's voice carried awe and terror in equal measure. Captain, they're offering to share the transformation with us. The data they're transmitting, its instructions, a map to follow them into whatever they've become. Chen approached Korvac, her form solidifying into something more recognizably human. We're not forcing anything. The choice was ours and now it's yours. You can leave, report to the Covenant that humanity is gone, maintain the comfortable lie, or you can carry the truth back, that there's another path, another way to exist. Some will be ready, most won't. That's why we disappeared gradually, took only those who truly wanted to transcend. What about Earth? The colonies? Korvac needed to know the full truth. Still there, still empty, Chen confirmed. We exist alongside physical reality now, not within it. We can observe, sometimes influence, but we can't go back to what we were. That's why these 12 stayed partially anchored, to serve as bridges. We've been waiting for the galaxy to be ready for the truth. You're the first step. The ship shuddered, not from damage but from transformation. The Pioneer was becoming something new, its human technology merging with the impossibilities of the expanse. Through the viewports, Korvac could see the crimson clouds parting, revealing glimpses of structures that couldn't exist. Cities built from light and thought. Entire civilizations existing in the spaces between atoms. We've prepared a message, Chen said, handing Korvac a data crystal that felt warm and alive. Everything the Covenant needs to know. Evidence of what we've become, instructions for those who wish to follow. But also warnings for those who aren't ready. The transformation isn't forced, but it's irreversible. We learned that some prefer the certainty of flesh, the comfort of limitations. There's no shame in that choice. Korvac held the crystal, feeling the weight of destiny in his palm. Returning with this would change everything. Some species would embrace the possibility. Others would declare humanity corrupted and dangerous. Wars might start, or perhaps a new age of exploration and evolution would begin. Why trust us with this? He asked. Because humans always believed in the potential of others, Chen replied. We saw partners where others saw competitors, found family among strangers. That hasn't changed. We've just expanded our definition of what family can be. The boarding team prepared to leave, carrying with them knowledge that would reshape the galaxy. As they reached the airlock, Chen called out one last time. Captain Korvac, tell them we're not gone. We're just waiting on the other side of impossible, keeping a light on for anyone brave enough to follow. The universe is bigger than anyone imagined, and there's room for everyone in infinity. The journey back to the Star Whisper felt like returning from a dream. The expanse released them easily, the crimson clouds parting like curtains. Behind them, the Pioneer faded into the red mist, but Korvac knew it would remain there, a lighthouse between realities. As they cleared the expanse's boundary, returning to normal space where physics made sense and time moved in one direction, Korvac faced his crew. They had a choice to make. Report everything and change the galaxy forever, or bury the truth and maintain the peace of ignorance. The data crystal pulsed in his hand. Warm with possibilities, Captain, Threk said quietly. What do we tell them? Korvac looked at the stars, thinking of humanity's courage, their willingness to leap into the unknown. He thought of all the species content with their boundaries, safe in their limitations. And he made the only choice a true explorer could make. We tell them the truth. We tell them humanity found a way to touch infinity, and they're holding the door open for anyone brave enough to follow. The Star Whisper turned toward Covenant space, carrying a message that would echo through the ages. Humanity hadn't disappeared. They had simply gone ahead, blazing a trail into impossibility, waiting for the rest of the galaxy to find the courage to follow. In the crimson expanse, 12 partially human souls maintained their vigil, bridges between the real and the transcendent, proof that sometimes the greatest act of exploration isn't finding new worlds, but discovering new ways to exist. The signal continued to broadcast, no longer a distress call but an invitation. And across the galaxy, those with courage enough to dream of impossible things began to listen.